Atomfall is a little bit Stalker 2, a little bit Dying Light, a touch LA Noire, and a lot of something else entirely. But it might also be the next big high-friction survival action game that you will not be able to put down. Our starfighter Jasmine Gold Wilson got a hands-on preview of Atomfall, and I had a chat with her about it to see what she thinks. So stick around if you want to find out more about Atomfall. Hi Jazz, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Maddie. How are you today?
I am good. So you have been playing Atomfall for us.
Yes, I have. And yeah, it definitely was a lot more of a tough onboarding process than I thought it would be, but in a good way. I think in a way that really fits with the tone that it's trying to set.
Yeah, it looks really interesting to me because it's so British. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of signposting elements to it that can feel, I guess, sometimes too subtle for non-English people to understand, but also there are enough of like the larger iconographical features that will be immediately recognizable, like the red phone boxes, like all these sweet little old deers up north. Like there is definitely a lot of personality to the whole game, and I think it's that sort of stylistic element, it's that framing that really ties it all in and makes it really quite a unique survival action experience compared to the many others out there.
Yeah, it looks a lot sort of like brighter and like almost cheerier than some other survival games. Like that's the only way I can describe it.
I wouldn't call it cheery. I think the thing about it really is that actually it's quite, I found it to be quite dark, to be honest. Like it might seem all like, oh, happy go lucky. What's that phrase? Jolly hockey sticks, that's the one. It might seem that way, but it might seem all like, oh la di da, this is like a strange overgrown wilderness version of England, but really there is a lot of dark stuff happening in Atomfall, and the whole purpose of the game is to basically just explore this wild, like this urban jungle. Nature's basically taken back this whole region in the north following this horrible cataclysmic nuclear failure or explosion, or well, something happened. I don't know if it was an explosion, but something's happened, and you basically have to explore and find your way through this massive area without dying, and hopefully figure out what happened and also who you are as a character. So pretty wild.
There's a little bit of a mystery going on.
A lot of a mystery, definitely. Like I think that for me was sort of the main thing that again, a lot of different elements made me feel a little bit like I was coming into something that was familiar yet brand new. Like I had flavors of Dying Light. I'm sure that we've all heard the Fallout England, comparisons, and maybe a bit of Far Cry elements in there too. But really, it was just because it's such a like hodgepodge of so many different familiar elements. The fact that it had this really strange non-linear task-based sort of structure in terms of like the leads rather than like a main quest and side quest, that was something that I found pretty jarring at first, but again, I think it kind of makes sense with how odd everything feels.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of a good point to make because I see a lot of people making comparisons to Fallout with Atomfall, like you said, Fallout England or whatever you want to put it as. But Fallout always seems to have it has a key storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Fallout 3, you find your dad. Fallout 4, you find your kids. Like, so
it's just taken, yeah.
Yeah, it's just taken. Liam Neeson is here. I mean, he was in 3, wasn't he? But so there's no main story in Atomfall, or is it just sort of a bit puzzly?
It's kind of like a narrative puzzle is kind of the way that I would personally describe how I experienced it. So I played it for an hour and a half, and I basically had one lead in my journal, and a lead is what the game calls basically like a mission directive. So it's like, oh, go to the abandoned mines and find this woman. And you can do that, but you can also choose not to do that. And the way that the game works is that there is an overarching narrative, or rather that there's like a chain of events, or some kind of story structure, and all of the different leads that you come across, they all feed into that timeline. And it doesn't really matter which ones you do first. Like, there's no wrong way to play the game, and that's really, really interesting. Like, there's no such thing as like, oh, I'm gonna do a main mission. Oh no, I found a side quest. Should I do the main mission first? Oh, should I do that? Like, there's no element of like dithering or going off course, because everything you're doing does kind of feed into your specific experience of this overarching narrative. And no matter where you enter it, you'll always kind of, it's it's always one track. Like, you could go the opposite way and do something totally different, but the narrative is seeded through everything that you do. And the more you uncover about the place, about yourself, about how this world works, the more that you sort of learn how the different systems functions, you know, like how the weapons function, how what the fuck a feral is, for example. All of these different elements, as they unfold, it all kind of helps you piece together the puzzle of what happened, because that's really the purpose of the game. Like, you're not finding your kids or your dad, you're finding out what happened, you're finding out who you are, you're finding out, like, why is the military here? Why do they have these robots? Why do all the robots look like Doctor Who kind of robots? It's like a bunch of Daleks everywhere. Like, well, not everywhere actually. I only saw them in one specific area. But yeah, like I said, it's just, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different elements, and you know, a lot to explore. And I really think that like the explore element is what makes the game.
Obviously, a big part of the game is sort of combat and survival.
Mm.
I know you you mentioned you struggled with that a little bit. Do you mind touching on that?
Oh, yeah. So, I am someone who, I like to play games that make me feel big and powerful and strong. I like to decimate huge hordes of bad guys, use big, strong guns, feel absolutely powerful, magnificent. And you don't really get that in Atomfall, at least at the very beginning when I played. You have nothing but, you know, a couple rusty old guns, a cricket bat, a hammer, and a bandage, and that's pretty much all I had on me. And the thing with combat is that, like, yes, combat is important, but it's important because it's also very optional. Like, my issue that I had was that I tried to fight everything because I forgot that as a survival action game, you know, there is a steep sort of learning curve to it. There's like not a difficulty spike necessarily, but you basically just have to, I had to ascertain my current level of power, which by the way was nothing. And then I just kind of, you know, I said, I don't believe you. I think I can do it anyway. I don't believe this game. So I tried to kill like a bunch of baddies. Didn't go very well. I soon realized that I preferred one kind of weapon over another, which was the sickle. The sickle was my best friend. That baseball bat, not a fan. Though it is funny how like the enemies kind of flop about like rag dolls when you knock them over the head. But yeah, like the combat element is interesting because it's optional, but it's also meant to be very realistic in that you don't have to fight everything. You can fight everything, but whether you'll necessarily get something from that is like, you know, yet to be seen. I don't know if you get more experience for killing more things. It doesn't seem like you do, because again, the purpose isn't to kill everything, it's to uncover the story. So it's very much like how you view your character in this survival scenario, especially because they are a bit of like an everyman kind of person. There's no voice acting on the protagonist that I heard anyway. There's no kind of name given or backstory. You're just a blank slate. And so that's kind of part of the fun, is carving out your way through Casterfell Woods.
With the like sticking with combat here, obviously Rebellion made Sniper Elite.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people probably want to know a bit about if this is very similar to Sniper Elite from sort of an FPS action standpoint. Do you have anything kind of to touch on there?
I would say that the gunplay definitely feels very reminiscent. I did play Sniper Elite Resistance for preview a couple times, and I definitely found a lot of similarities with these guns. Maybe it's because they're kind of old school, like very rusty, mid-century kinds of guns. So maybe that's why they felt very similar. But you know, there's no crosshair really. There's just the sights to guide you, and and your character's real shaky. You know, the guy has a heart rate that's all over the shop, and that thing is the bane of my life. But I'll touch on that later on. But I found the gunplay um realistically quite clunky, which is a good thing. I mean that in a good way, not bad clunky. I mean it in that I wouldn't expect, you know, a revolver in the 1960s, even in this like retro futuristic world. I wouldn't expect it to be like a gun in like in Mass Effect or Cyberpunk, you know. So
Hmm.
it very much fits that theme. It very much fits the world that it's in. But you have to be. I think this will be a bit of a test for not a test, but like a fun challenge for any fan of an FPS. I just hope your aim is better than mine, which it probably is. To be honest.
um, we want to do a little bit of like a pros and cons here.
Okay.
Obviously, this is still a preview. It's still a work in progress. The game is not out yet. Do you mind giving me some of your biggest pros of this game?
Sure. Biggest pros, I would say, beautiful world building, very tightly hewn together kind of theme. There's this beautiful sort of pervasive visual element, but not only in the visuals, also in the story, in like the acting, in just the whole effect of it as a person who is in there, like in the throes of the game. It's just a very fluid experience. Like nothing felt necessarily out of the ordinary, even though again it's this massive mix of things. But I would say, yeah, like it's a very cohesive idea and theme across the board. Number one, I did love that.
Hmm.
Number two, I do love just how much stuff there is to do. There's just stuff. Like if you are someone who is notorious for like avoiding doing main missions in games, this is the game for you. It just feels so free. Like there are no rules. There's no one telling you, oh, you have to go here. Like you don't have people telling you, oh, when are we going to go there? Don't forget to go here. Have we gone there? Like there's no one nagging you to do anything. You just make a note of it, and then you can decide to do that whenever you want to. So yeah, it's very free in that way, which is a big plus for some people. Again, this idea of it being a quote unquote choose your own adventure game kind of feeds into that. I'm very keen
Hmm.
to see how the story plays out in a way. So I would say that the story in itself is also a big draw for me because it's so different and because it plays out. And I mean that in like a separate way from the mechanics of it, like before. But in terms of, I've never really seen a narrative. It's not narrative driven, but I would say it's like a narrative guided game. Like there's clearly a story, a secret, a mystery that is the governing principle over this area. And I think finding that out as a process is done in a very like clean way from what I've seen so far. Even though I do think that some people might need a bit more hand holding or a bit more guidance rather, not hand holding, because it can be very jarring just to be like, oh, what do I do?
Just sort of plopped
Um,
in the world and figure
yeah,
it out.
yeah. And again, okay. And also, I love that sickle. That sickle is my best friend. I recommend murdering the first druid you see, getting their sickle, and never letting it go because that thing is whippy and fast and can kill most things in 2 or 3 hits. So that's my best recommendation. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
But again, it's all a learning curve. It's all an experiment. I just hope that you guys take a bit less time to accept the laws of the world because I just kind of tried to mess around with it really, and it punishes
I
you
mean,
for it.
that's how you know that that you like a game, and what you don't like about a game is just about trying things, seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. And again, just kind of like it really is, because I think right now everyone seems to be so into these like big survival experiences, or rather games that are difficult, like games that make you work that much harder just to get like the bare minimum. Of course, I know everyone is mad about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 right now, and I think a big part of that is because it's really rewarding, but you have to go to extreme lengths to get like the bare minimum. Like, thank God I can have a weapon. Thank God I can have clothes, you know? And in a way, you know, Atomfall taps into a similar kind of vein where like I was thrilled to find a bunker that was devoid of all enemies. I was like, yes, finally, I can just walk around, have some fun. And then I tripped over a tripwire and I burnt my leg off and then I died. So, like that is, it's pick and choose. It's a party out there. But things like that I think do add to the high stakes nature of the world. Like if it was too easy to survive, then why would you bother? But I think like finding safety in Atomfall feels like such a relief. And like it's those moments when I realized, oh, I actually feel really unsafe playing this. Like clearly I do. I'm hiding through grass all the time. And I panic every time I see one of those cultist druid guys in the distance and run the other way. But again, I didn't do that until I realized, oh, I actually can't just snipe them all down with my rickety little handgun because it does take 20 years to reload.
I think
Oh,
that's a sign of a good survival game, because I know when I try and play survival games, if an enemy makes me feel panicked straight away, I'm like, oh, this game's got it right.
yeah,
Like I feel weak, I feel vulnerable right now, and this is what I want from a survival game.
definitely. I am wondering though if there will be any kind of element of like building up. I'm sure that you can get stronger weapons. Like, I doubt they'd force you to do the whole game with a rusty little like rifle or whatever it was. I think I had a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and I found them all to be very annoying. So hence the sickle. Although I did get used to the handgun. I think but I've always been a fan of handguns. I think if Atomfall can still offer an element of a slight power fantasy or an element of like getting physically stronger, there is a skill system. The skills, and that one's kind of interesting. It's kind of like you have to get like a skill blueprint. And I think I got more than one of a certain skill, and I was like, what do I do with all these blueprints? But then I think I traded them in with like a barman for some alcohol, which is very, very interesting. Now that is a post-apocalyptic world. You're having to teach someone how to make a bomb in exchange for booze. I think that's pretty nail on the head. Who needs
Um,
money? Just give me booze.
well,
Um,
exactly. That's fine. It's a party out there. You'll probably
yeah,
need it if
yeah,
you're in a post-apocalyptic situation.
yeah. I mean, it's. I know that our editor in chief, Josh, did kind of make a bit of a comparison to something like LA Noire in his last preview, and I kind of get it at first. I think that's the thing, is that I had really no idea what to expect from Atomfall, because I was like, I've heard so many comparisons to so many games, almost too much, like in a way that made it almost unhelpful to go into it, because I'm like, what do you mean? It's like LA Noire meets Fallout meets Dying Light. Like, what does that mean? Like, what would that feel like? And I think the LA Noire elements do come from like the investigation elements, like seeing what comes of doing something. Like, listen to someone when they tell you, oh, that one's a wrong, and you can be like, I don't know, I don't trust anyone. Or you can be like, that's right, I believe you. And I guess there might be consequences further down the line. It really kind of makes you build up this sense of massive distrust for everyone and everything around you. And I think that you do kind of get that same feeling in LA Noire, where you're always wondering, is someone lying to me? Although there is no doubt button in Atomfall, which I wish there was. I think we should bring that back, actually.
Bring back the facial expressions.
Yes. Oh, Cole Phelps, I miss you.
Ah, R.I.P. Is that a spoiler? How long did the game come out? It came out in like what, 2012 or something? Spoilers for
Yeah,
LA Noire. Um, is there anything you would really like to see from Atomfall?
I would love to know more about these ferals, and I would love to kind of see a bit more from them. I think in the preview, I probably could have investigated it more, but I didn't come across any leads. But I'm very keen to see how Rebellion makes these ferals kind of distinct and unique from the other kinds of similar mushroom-y zombies type things that we've seen in other games. Of course, like there's The Last of Us and stuff like that, but like they look a lot like the husks from Mass Effect, and they kind of vomit this infectious goo on you, and then you kind of have these hallucinations that are like, listen to us. And I guess that's all to do with the druids and how they're listening to this voice. So I do hope that like the ferals aren't some like red herring kind of plot thing where they just happen to be zombies. I hope that there really is some more to them. I would love to see more of the horror elements because, like I said, I think there are some really great moments of like tension or opportunities for some good scares, aside from just the jump scares in the tunnels from the ferals. But again, like I think it's hard to put my finger on like one thing that I'd like to see more of because I only did have an hour and a half with it. But I do think that, there are so many elements there that they could play with. That yeah, I do think though that like the ferals and how they fit into things, I'm very, very keen to see how that plays out. I have seen some people comparing it to like Stalker 2, which also had a similar sort of um quarantine zone with all these weird grotesque beings in it, like there's like a horror element there. So I am wondering if all of that comes later on, or if I've been lied to. I hope not. But again, but a part of me is also like, yeah, but like, do we need to have more things in a game that already seems to have so many things? And the real answer is, if it's done well, then yeah, like I would love to see it because again, right now it does seem like a very nicely hewn together world, and I would love just to see more of it and more how like more overlaps between all these little disparate parts, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite looking at the footage that you supplied. Was quite excited to see like the zombie kind of thing appearing.
Mm,
I sort of didn't expect that from Atomfall, and I
yeah.
don't know why, but I'm really excited about it. So I do hope they are shown more.
Definitely. Like again, I think it's something that I had it in the back of my mind. I was like, I know that there is some kind of like undead or horror element in this game, and I really hope I find it. And then I ran into that tunnel and I was like, oh shit, actually, oh yay. Even though I did die to them many, many, many times. I do think that would be really interesting just to hear more about like this virus that seems to be infecting people.
Yeah, I mean, Atomfall to me really piques my interest, if I'm going to be
Mm,
honest, because it just part of it I think is like a bit of almost nostalgia. I obviously did not grow up in the 60s, but the whole like environment is very reminiscent of where I grew up as a kid. Um and there's something just so charming about how Atomfall looks. And then you throw in the zombie element, throw in the sci-fi sort of
mm,
almost Doctor Who elements as well. I feel like
yeah.
it's shaping up to be quite an interesting game, and I'm personally quite excited for it. I feel like I've been craving something similar to this for a while. I think I needed a bit of Fallout-esque
Yeah.
survival in my life.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot that many people will connect with in the game, whether it's like the setting, certain genre elements, or like certain gameplay elements. I really think that Rebellion's done something really interesting here in combining so many different threads into one game. And like you said, like there is this curious sort of opposition at work where like you don't think that these things should be in the same space, and yet it does work. But again, that's if you can handle being shoved into an open world with not much to go on and a baseball bat or cricket bat rather, because it's England.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I think Atomfall sounds pretty cool, to be honest. I just love the vibe. I love the aesthetic. And I love how cryptic it is. I especially as like you said, Josh said it's got like LA Noire elements in it.
Mm,
That just sounds
yeah.
so good to me.
Yeah, it's definitely something very different, but I do think that it's coming at like the exact right time for any fan of like a good, challenging open world experience. So stay tuned.
Atomfall will be launching on March 27th on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Will you be picking this game up? What are you most looking forward to seeing in Atomfall? Let us know in the comments, and stick with GamesRadar for the latest previews, reviews, and more.